Hey, what's up, YouTube? Welcome to my channel, Ask Jimmy Smith. Today, I am excited to actually bring to you another video that was multiple questions by a commenter on one of my other videos. So I really love getting comments, especially questions from those of you that are watching these videos from my audience, because then it helps me to tailor the content that I make for this channel. And specifically, this question revolves around prep centers. First, the pros and cons of prep centers, and I actually have 6 of each for you, although I'm sure I could figure out a bunch more pros and a bunch more cons, but I went with 6 pros and 6 cons. Also, I wanted to talk about my experience with prep centers, what I recommend, and actually a resource that I recommend that have vetted prep centers for you to check out. And additionally, maybe some other questions that this commenter had left in regards to specific uses for prep centers, if you wanted to use it for a subset of your products or not, if you wanted to do all or nothing, etc. So that's what we're going to be covering today. All right, but before we get into the content on answering those questions from the audience member, I wanted to point your attention to something that I have recently gotten a much more of a passion project around, which is helping people to grow and scale their Amazon businesses. And so if you know anything, you've been around my content at all for any length of time, I've written the book, Side Hustle to Full-Time Income from $0 to $100,000 per month with retail and online arbitrage. But about the first half to 60% of the book is on the first starting phases of your business, going from $0 to $10,000, and just how to learn how to source products. And we've actually had over 1,000 different success stories come from the content in the book, as well as my course. And you can find all the information for that at AskJimmySmith.com. You can also see all the success stories, or at least over 500 of those 1,000 at AskJimmySmith.com/success. But the passion project of mine over the last year has been truly focusing in on helping people to scale their businesses, which is why I'm excited to talk about prep centers today. But is to be able to scale their businesses. And so I did a program a while back, about 6 months ago at the time of this recording, called the Advanced Replens Mastermind. And it was a mastermind of 30 different sellers that are all doing over $10,000 per month. And I'm actually doing another mastermind on that, where I give away over 60 of our standard operating procedures. It's a 10-week program, meetings at least twice a week, where we are very intensive on how to scale your business from $10,000 and beyond with the replens and or wholesale Amazon model. So if you are interested in that and applying to be a part of that, please head over to advancedreplensmastermind.com. That's advanced replens with an S, mastermind.com. And you can put in an application there, and I'll make sure to have somebody on the team reach out to you. It is something I plan and hope to do on an ongoing basis. And so depending on when you see this, then may be a waiting list for the next round, but I just wanted to put that out there for this video. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the question. And so the question that was left, first and foremost, what are the pros and cons of using a prep center in your Amazon FBA or merchant fulfilled business, whether it's replens, arbitrage, wholesale, private label, anything? So I'm going to start off with the pros. So the 6 pros that I came up with, and again, there could be plenty more for pros and plenty more for cons, but I don't want to overload you with everything. The first one is that obviously with a prep center, it is outsourceable, which I don't even know is a word, but it's outsourceable and it's easily scalable. So I combine that into one. You can easily outsource the task of prep and ship, and you can easily or more easily scale the business because you don't have to worry about training, employees, procedures, etc. They already have all of those procedures set in stone in their business, and they're already used to working with clients. So you can basically add on that service into your business with systems that they already have in their business to help you to scale the business much quicker because you're using somebody else to do the prep and ship. The second pro is that there are typically set fees that you can build into the profitability analysis whenever you're sourcing for either arbitrage, wholesale, or even private label. You can build those fees in. There's not a ton of variables, like maybe an employee's going slower one day if you had your own warehouse, or maybe there's different things that can go wrong. Either way, with a prep center, if it costs $1 per unit, that's how much it's going to cost you. Now, there are caveats, and this is actually a con I'll get to in a minute, but there are some caveats with the pricing that there are other variables, but you typically know what those are. Like bubble wrap can cost more money, or a poly bag can cost more money, or a certain size box can cost more money, but you know that up front. So you can build that into the cost. That is still somewhat of a pro on the pro column for using prep centers. The third one is that it is typically a simple and easy process. Now, the first time you do an order with somebody or with a prep center, it might be a little bit cumbersome trying to figure out their processes and their procedures. But once you get used to it, it is a fairly simple process. You know the address to send stuff to, you know the costs that it's going to cost you to prep those items, and you just follow that procedure each time. Again, very simple and easy to follow. I know plenty of people that have completely outsourced all the prep and ship of their business. They can do this from anywhere in the world. They can do their online arbitrage, their wholesale, their private label from anywhere, because they have a prep center doing all of this, because it is so simple and easy with many of the prep centers that are out there. And again, not all prep centers are alike, so there might be some bad ones, but for the most part, they're going to have very good processes for you to follow. The fourth pro is that there are no employees for you to manage, at least for the prep and ship side of things. Now, you could hire virtual assistants or employees to shop for your business, but ultimately for prep and ship, you don't have to deal with employees to manage. And that can be a very big headache. While I love the employees that we have, it can be very difficult to deal with schedules, to deal with any kind of interpersonal conflicts, to deal with people getting sick, or maybe they want to take a vacation, and then that sets you back. Obviously, they're entitled to take a vacation, but that can set back a business. Whereas if you're using a service and they have their own employees, they've got their procedures, you don't have to manage those people. You don't have to deal with the communication or any conflicts or hiring people or firing people or any of the human resources side of things. You can just completely offload that to the service side of that business, the service business that you'd be using. The fifth pro for using a prep center is that they can accept pallets much easier. Now, yes, you could rent a warehouse, but many, especially newer arbitrage or wholesale sellers, might not want to get a warehouse just yet, or a storage unit or whatever. And even some of the warehouses that you get may not have the ability to accept pallets. They might not have a dock where a truck can go up to. And so if that's the case, then you need to get a truck from the company that's shipping it to you that has a lift gate so it can drop it down, or you need a forklift so that you can get the products out of their truck. So with this service, with using a prep center, and if you ever get pallets, you don't need to worry about the fact that they can't accept pallets in most cases. I guess I shouldn't blatantly say that, because there may be a prep center or two out there that can't accept pallets, but they should be able to, because most of them focus on wholesale and private label. So that makes it much easier for you to expand the business into bigger suppliers, into doing private label, into doing wholesale, because you've got the ability to buy a bigger amount in bulk. So then the sixth and final pro that I have listed here anyway for this video, and please, in the comment section, please let me know other pros, other cons that you can think of, because that would be great. And maybe if I get enough of them, I'll just use your comments and make another video so that it can be more encompassing. But the sixth and final pro for using a prep center is that you don't need to buy or lease a warehouse. And I know I just mentioned warehouses, but this can become a pain depending on where you're at. You know, if you're in a rural town, and I know somebody that was in a rural town that was only paying like $400 a month for this massive warehouse because nobody else was going to use it. And so they got a pretty good deal. But if you're in New York or you're in California somewhere, your lease deal might be ridiculous to worry about. Where we're at in St. Louis, we got very lucky. Typically, you would be dealing with a triple net lease where you've got to pay for your portion of expenses on the roof or anything that goes wrong. We got lucky that it's a single net lease. All we have to worry about are our utilities, and we have to worry about paying rent. If something breaks in the warehouse, we aren't responsible for our portion of that warehouse, because as long as we didn't break it, right? If we broke it, then we would be responsible for it. But if like the roof starts to leak, we don't have to pay our portion of the roof. Whereas with a triple net lease, you do. Also, if you're in a bigger town, many times they're going to require 2 to 3 year lease agreements. Whereas if you're in a smaller town, maybe it'll be year to year or month by month, depending on where you're at. But that can be kind of a headache depending on where you're at. So by utilizing a prep center, you can have the ability to not have to deal with any of that warehouse stuff. You don't have to set up new internet. You don't have to set up trash service. You don't have to set up electric and Wi-Fi, or yeah, I guess I said internet, but all of these other utilities that go into it. And you also don't have to worry about something leaking into your warehouse that you then have to shut down operations while those leaks are getting fixed. So all of that to say that that is another pro, that you don't have to deal with the cumbersome nature of getting a warehouse, getting employees, trying to figure out all the systems and templates and processes and all of that. Now, that is again why I'm doing the Advanced Replens Mastermind, because we have a warehouse and I help people to build their systems and processes. And I give them the ones that we have for the warehouse, as well as teach them on how to do them if they're using a prep center or something else. So that is one reason that I talked about that at advancedreplensmastermind.com. But let's go into the cons of using a prep center, because there are 6 cons that I have. Using a prep center isn't all, easy breezy, so to speak. And so the first con that I have is that online arbitrage orders can get canceled very easily at a prep center. Some of them they won't for whatever reason, but many of them they will get canceled because depending on the store you're buying from, they can see that prep center gets ordered to constantly. And if that store does not like people doing what we do from an arbitrage standpoint, they can cancel the orders because they don't want sellers to sell these products. Typically, you'd see this with Target or other retailers that don't like online arbitrage sellers to be buying stuff from them. And so that can be a big issue. And I know there are a lot of international sellers that sell on Amazon and have been successful through my courses and book and whatnot, but they have this as an issue, that there are certain online stores that they can't shop at because they have issues with orders getting canceled at the prep center that they decide to use. So if ultimately you can work around it, you can find other suppliers. You can potentially find a prep center that doesn't have that issue. Some prep centers actually have workarounds for it, which I don't know what they all are, but some of them do have workarounds for it that they can tell you. But ultimately that can be a pretty big con if you're doing only online arbitrage, that those orders can get canceled. The second con is that the cost is typically higher per unit than if you're using your own warehouse and employees. For instance, it might cost us 40 cents per item on a specific item for prepping at our warehouse, whereas at a prep center, it might be $1 per unit. And so that can eat up a lot of the costs. But again, we have to deal with the headaches of a warehouse and managing employees and all of the things that come with that. So it's kind of a trade-off in my opinion, but it is still a con that the cost is higher per unit. And so typically that means that's going to eliminate some of the products that you can sell because the profitability is going to be much lower for you if you're using a prep center than it would be potentially for me when we're using our own warehouse and employees. The third con is that some prep centers are just bad. And I hate to say that, but based on my experience, based on the experiences of other people, there are just some prep centers that are no good. They're not good at communicating. They're not good with online arbitrage or retail arbitrage. They're not very good at accepting certain orders. Sometimes they won't listen and they'll just send out products right away instead of holding them for a bigger shipment. So that's just a risk you run with any service that you pay for, is that service provider may just be bad. The good news is you can switch to another one if you wanted to, but you run the risk that if you select one that's no good, then you're going to have to deal with those problems and those headaches. And we've had that experience in the past for ourselves as well, because we have used prep centers in the past in our business multiple times, actually, even with the warehouse that we have. The fourth one is that some prep centers don't do arbitrage items. So if you're trying to do online arbitrage or you're looking for a local one for retail arbitrage drop-offs, there are many prep centers that will not do arbitrage at all. But again, the good news is you can find another one that potentially can. The other issue though, if you do use a prep center with arbitrage, if there's expiration issues or if something comes damaged and there's other, potentially returns that you have to deal with because the product arrived damaged, that ultimately can add up in additional fees for you to have your prep center deal with those things. But it just depends on the prep center and how they handle the arbitrage products. The fifth con that I have is that there's less control over when your items go out. So some prep centers will allow you to select, hey, I want all my items to be sent today. So they're going to store them until you tell them to ship them. But many prep centers will ship upon receipt, and they will just ship as many things as they come in. They'll ship them out immediately because they're trying to hit a turnaround of 24 to 48 hours in many cases. But if, employees are sick and things happen, or they're just super backlogged, you can't control when things get out because you don't have your employees on them. And so with the prep center, if they are backlogged in Q4 at any other time, maybe it takes 72 hours, maybe it takes a whole week for things to get out because they are overwhelmed and you have no control over that. And so that is an unfortunate piece of working with a prep center, is that you do lose a little bit of that control, actually quite a bit of that control over when your items can go out. And then the sixth and final con that I have for this video anyway, again, leave a comment if you've got some more, but is that there are additional fees with or for everything. There's additional fees for everything with some prep centers. And I give that caveat because there are some prep centers that are very easy to work with. It's just, hey, this is the flat fee for this is the flat fee for that, and that's it. There are some prep centers that'll say, this is the fee to prep, but then there's a bubble wrap fee, and then there's a poly bag fee, and then there's a sticker fee, and then there's a box fee. And then there's a bundling fee, and then there's a multi-pack fee, and then there's all these different things. And you'll see that some of the, actually, honestly, the biggest prep centers typically have all those little fees because they have more operations and just more business that they have to deal with. And so having those fees makes sense for their business, but they're also more professional and typically a little bit quicker. But it is hard for you then to figure out, at least quickly, how much it's going to cost you for prep on your specific items, because you don't know until the items show up. Maybe you can't tell on an OA, online arbitrage order, if something is glass versus if something is plastic. It can be difficult sometimes. And so that could be an issue. You send something thinking it's plastic, but then you find out it's got bubble wrap and it's a 5-pack instead of a 5-pack of plastic. And so that adds an extra $1.50 to your prep cost that you weren't expecting. And so that can become an issue. Also, additional fees for returns for damaged items. If you want your items from Amazon to be returned to your prep center, sometimes there will be fees for that. Storage fees, that kind of stuff. All of that can add up. So I highly recommend checking out recommended prep centers. And I'll give you that resource here towards the end, where I recommend going to find a list of vetted prep centers that have been highly vetted by a team that I trust. But so those are the 6 pros and the 6 cons for using a prep center. One of the other questions in that initial question on the YouTube video was, have I used a prep center in the past, or do I currently use one? Now, currently we do not use one. We've got our warehouse, and we've had our warehouse for a few years at this point, and we'll continue to have our warehouse because we enjoy it. We've got a good process. It's good from a pricing standpoint, et cetera. But we have used prep centers in the past. The first time was before we ever had a warehouse. And that prep center was good for a while, but then they had some issues with checking our products, and they sent in a bunch of broken products and charged us extra for that, for receiving them back, even though it was their fault. And so we had that issue, and we stopped using them because it was just a bad experience. And they're still in operation today, and I'm not going to say who they are, but ultimately, you know, they're a great prep center. I'm sure that they've fixed those issues, but for us, we had a bad experience. So we stopped using one and decided to do a warehouse. Now, we also used one in the height of 2019 when the virus was out and everything was shut down and Amazon was exploding. Well, we decided to use a prep center because we were too full in our warehouse. So we used the prep center as kind of an overflow, and they were able to prep things for us, FBA, as well as a lot of fulfilled by merchant things, because canned goods at the time were doing very well in May of 2019. And so we decided to, to send those products to the prep center, and they fulfilled them for us. And it was a very good experience. We don't need them anymore as the business came back to normal levels, over $100,000 per month. And that was the last time that we used a prep center in that capacity. So that was our experience. One very good, one a little bit more poor. Actually, the prep center I'm talking about that we just used that was very good is actually no longer in existence. The owner moved, and that was, perfectly fine, but they did an excellent job, and I would highly recommend them if they were still around. But in terms of where I recommend checking out to get a prep center. So there is a list of vetted and checked out prep centers, both actually in the United States and international prep centers. So there's Canada ones. I believe there's an Australia one. There might be ones in the UK as well. If you go to prepcenternetwork.com, that's prepcenternetwork.com. There's a list of vetted and approved prep centers by Jim Cockrum and the My Silent Team community, which that my course goes through, and the Proven Amazon course, et cetera, all goes through them. So I highly recommend that list. Additionally, there is one other question that I wanted to make sure that I answered from the commenter who left the question on the video, which was, what about using a prep center for a subset of your items versus being all or nothing? And I kind of explained our experience with that. So we did use a prep center all or nothing at one point and decided that was not going to work out. But that's not because of the model. It was just because of the prep center at the time. But ultimately, I do like having a prep center as a backup for anything that, maybe you run out of space at your house or run out of space at your warehouse. It's good to be set up with a prep center no matter what. So I would probably reach out to a prep center, make some plans, get integrated into their system. And so that way you can test out how it works, see if you like using the prep center. And then maybe one day you're going to come a time where you're like, hey, this house of mine or this warehouse of ours is it's too full and we need to use a prep center. We're already set up with prep center A and we're going to send these things to that prep center. Or maybe you send specific suppliers to a prep center, right? But you send other suppliers to your house because they don't like to send to a prep center, if that makes sense. Maybe, like, for instance, I mentioned Target. Target doesn't like to send to prep centers because they don't like resellers on their products. Well, instead of sending your items from Target to the prep center, you send those to your house, you prep and ship those, you send everything else to the prep center, right? Or maybe you do fulfilled by merchant at your house and all the FBA goes to the prep center, or vice versa. Or maybe you do all of your retail arbitrage stuff, you prep yourself, and then you send all of your online arbitrage stuff to a prep center, or wholesale just to the prep center, private label just to the prep center, etc. So I do think that it's actually a great idea to not have all of your eggs in one basket, so to speak, by having to do all of your own prep or by having to send all of your stuff to one prep center. Even if you love one prep center, I highly recommend having 2 or 3 prep centers in case that one prep center goes bad, that one prep center is full, that one prep center goes out of business, and you have other ones that you can pivot to. So check out prepcenternetwork.com for the list of vetted and approved prep centers. Very great prep centers on there, and I highly recommend checking that out. Additionally, if you're interested in any of the information that I said about scaling your business past $10,000 a month, so if you're already at $10,000 a month on your Amazon business and you're looking to grow that with systems and procedures over a 10-week time period, we form masterminds for everybody that go farther than just those 10 weeks, then please head over to advancedreplensmastermind.com. And also check out my website, AskJimmySmith.com, if you're interested in the course or the book or even all of those success stories. All of the links are below in the description, so you can check those out at your leisure. Again, as I've mentioned multiple times, please leave a comment on this video. It helps me to know what you need covered. It helps me to know that things are going well. If you liked the content, let me know what other pros and cons you've seen from prep centers. And then lastly, I would appreciate it if you'd like the video, share the video, and subscribe to this channel. It helps me to be motivated, really, to keep doing this because seeing the subscriptions and the likes and stuff helps me to know that I'm helping you. So that's what I'm here for. If I can help in any way, please post that in the comments or reach out to me at my website as well. So thank you so much. I really hope that this video helped you and blessed you. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a blessed rest of your week.